The courtroom doors slammed open just as Marcus Hale heard his sister scream from the witness corridor, and every instinct he had spent 22 years burying came alive at once. "Don't touch her!" he shouted, moving toward the sound before the bailiff could even react. His sister, Emily Hale, stood against the wall with tears streaking her face, one hand trembling around a folder that had already been torn apart. Across from her were three men in expensive suits, and behind them stood the attorney who had spent the morning telling the judge that Emily was a dangerous murderer who belonged behind bars. Marcus stopped 3 steps away. He looked at the men, then at his sister, then at the photographs scattered across the polished floor. Something was wrong. Not courtroom wrong. Not ordinary corruption wrong. The kind of wrong Marcus had spent his career learning to recognize before anyone else could see it. "Marcus," Emily whispered, barely audible, "they said you couldn't stop them." For 22 years, Marcus Hale had been known publicly as a senior intelligence official. Almost nobody knew the authority behind that title. Almost nobody knew how many international crises had ended because Marcus had made a phone call that never appeared in a government record, and absolutely nobody in that courtroom knew that the man they had framed as Emily's brother was the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. But Marcus didn't reveal it. Not yet, because his sister's murder charge was only the surface of a much larger operation, and the evidence proving it had just been placed in the hands of the one person who could destroy the entire conspiracy. Marcus crouched and picked up a photograph. It showed Emily standing outside a corporate tower 3 nights earlier. The timestamp said 11:43 p.m. Marcus knew she had never been there. He knew because his protective detail had been watching her from the moment she left work. That meant someone had manufactured the photograph. Someone had manufactured the witness statements, someone had manipulated security footage, and someone had been confident enough to do it inside a federal investigation. Marcus turned the photograph over. On the back was a handwritten number. He recognized the pattern immediately. It wasn't a phone number. It was an internal reference code used by a private intelligence contractor that officially did not exist. His pulse slowed instead of rising. That was always when Marcus became most dangerous. He looked toward the prosecutor, Daniel Voss, who suddenly avoided his eyes. Then he looked at the judge. "Your Honor," Marcus said quietly, "before this hearing continues, I need the court to understand that my sister has been framed." The judge frowned. "And who exactly are you?" Marcus held the photograph between 2 fingers. "The person your investigators should have called before they built this case." But Marcus had one problem. The people behind the frame-up already knew who he was, and they had just made their first move against him. 24 hours earlier, Marcus had been sitting alone in a secure office overlooking Washington when his encrypted phone rang once. Not twice. Once. That meant emergency priority. He answered without speaking. A familiar voice said, "Director, we have a problem." It belonged to Elena Torres, Marcus's deputy chief of staff, and the one person outside his immediate family who knew how much danger his sister was actually in. "Emily's been arrested," Elena said. Marcus closed his eyes. "For what?" "Murder." The word seemed to hang in the room. Marcus stood slowly. "Whose?" Elena hesitated. "Adrian Cross." Marcus knew the name. Cross was the chief financial officer of Meridian Vector, a technology conglomerate with contracts touching satellites, artificial intelligence, telecommunications, and defense logistics. He had also been scheduled to testify before Congress about irregular transfers between several shell companies. "Where is Emily?" Marcus asked. "County detention. Her attorney says the evidence is overwhelming." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Then it's fabricated." Elena swallowed. "We think so too." Marcus walked to the window. Rain traced the glass in crooked lines, turning the city lights into blurred streaks. "Tell me everything." Elena opened a secure file. Cross was found dead in his apartment at 2:17 a.m. Emily's fingerprints are supposedly on a glass, her vehicle appears on a nearby camera, and there's a witness who says she argued with him that night. Marcus stared at the city. "Emily was with me." Elena went silent. "What?" "She called me at 1:30 a.m. She was frightened. I told her to stay home." Elena's voice dropped. "Then the timeline is impossible." "Exactly." Marcus knew what that meant. Someone had access to surveillance systems. Someone knew his relationship with Emily. Someone knew his schedule, and someone was willing to manufacture a murder case to silence her. But Marcus wasn't finished. What was Cross working on? Elena sent another file. Marcus opened it. The first page showed corporate transactions. The second showed foreign intermediaries. The third contained a list of names. Marcus stopped breathing for a moment. One of those names belonged to a senior official inside his own organization. Elena, he said, how secure is this channel? Compromised if they're inside the agency. Marcus looked at the list again. They're inside. At that moment, a second message appeared on his screen. It contained a photograph of Emily leaving her apartment. Underneath it were 6 words. You can save her, but not yourself. Marcus stared at the message for several seconds. Then he smiled without humor. They made one mistake, Elena asked. What mistake? Marcus deleted the message. They gave me a reason to stop playing defense. By sunrise, Marcus had quietly ordered an independent review of every piece of evidence in Emily's case. He didn't order arrests. He didn't threaten anyone. He simply started pulling threads. And the first thread led directly to a company called Black Meridian. Black Meridian was not officially a company. It had no public office, no legitimate executive registry, and no employees listed anywhere. Yet its fingerprints appeared in contracts connected to 12 corporations, 3 foreign governments, and several private security firms. Marcus had encountered the name once before, years earlier, buried inside an intelligence report that had been dismissed as unreliable. Now it was appearing everywhere. Elena traced a payment from Meridian Vector to a consulting company in Luxembourg, then to a private bank in Singapore, then through a chain of cryptocurrency wallets that eventually funded a shell corporation in Virginia. The shell corporation had 1 employee. Its name was Thomas Reed. Marcus knew Reed. Former military intelligence officer, brilliant, disciplined, missing for 9 years, officially presumed dead. He's alive, Marcus said. Elena nodded. We've confirmed it. Marcus looked at the screen. Then find him. 2 hours later, they found him in a small coastal town under a different name. Reed wasn't hiding because he feared the law. He was hiding because he knew exactly how far Black Meridian could reach. Marcus arranged a private meeting. Reed arrived wearing a gray coat and carrying no visible identification. He sat across from Marcus and stared at him for nearly a minute. I wondered when you'd come, Reed said. You knew about Emily? Marcus asked. I knew something was coming. Reed slid a small storage device across the table. Cross discovered what they were doing. Marcus didn't touch it. What were they doing? Reed looked toward the window. They weren't stealing money. They were manufacturing leverage. He explained that Black Meridian had been collecting compromising information on executives, judges, regulators, military officers, journalists, and politicians. When someone became inconvenient, they were framed, blackmailed, discredited, or pushed out. Cross had discovered a system designed to manipulate corporate investigations by feeding false information into legitimate channels. Emily wasn't the target because of anything she had done. She was the target because she was Marcus's sister. Why me? Marcus asked. Reed gave him a tired look. Because you're the one person they can't buy. Marcus finally picked up the device. Who runs Black Meridian? Reed hesitated. That's the part you're not going to like. Marcus waited. Someone inside your government. Marcus felt the old coldness settle into his chest. Not fear, calculation. Name. Reed shook his head. I don't have proof. Then why did you come here? Reed looked directly into Marcus's eyes. Because I know who can give you proof. Before Marcus could respond, Reed's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and went pale. They're here. Outside, 2 black vehicles stopped at the curb. Marcus didn't panic. He simply stood. Then we stopped running. But Reed grabbed his arm. No, you don't understand. They didn't come for me. Marcus looked toward the window. They came for Emily. And suddenly the entire operation became a race against a clock neither man could see. Marcus reached Emily's temporary safe location 20 minutes later. She was sitting on the floor beside the kitchen table, holding a mug with both hands even though the coffee had gone cold. Her face looked exhausted. Marcus sat beside her. Tell me everything. Emily looked at him. You won't believe me. Try me. She told him that 3 days before the murder, a man had approached her outside work. He had offered her money to deliver an envelope to Adrian Cross. She refused. The next day, she received a photograph of herself leaving her apartment. Then another photograph. Then a message telling her to stop asking questions. Why didn't you tell me? Marcus asked. Emily looked down. Because every time I called you, you sounded like you were already carrying the weight of the entire world. I didn't want to become another problem. Marcus's jaw tightened. You're my sister, you're never a problem. Emily finally handed him an envelope. Cross gave me this. Marcus opened it. Inside was a handwritten note and a small key. The note contained only one sentence. If they accuse Emily, look beneath the foundation. Marcus stared at the words. Where did he give you this? The night before he died. Marcus looked at the key. It was marked with a number. Storage facility. Elena confirmed the number belonged to an abandoned municipal archive. Marcus knew immediately that it was a trap, but traps could contain useful information. He sent a trusted team to secure the location and instructed them not to touch anything until the area was documented. Inside the facility, they discovered old servers, archived contracts, and dozens of sealed boxes. One box contained photographs of government officials meeting with Black Meridian representatives. Another contained payment records. The third contained something worse, a list of people who had been deliberately framed over the previous decade. Some had been imprisoned, some had lost careers, some had disappeared. At the bottom of the list was Emily's name. Beside it was a status code, active. Marcus stared at that word until Elena spoke softly. They're still moving against her. Marcus nodded. I know. Then another document appeared. It showed a planned court filing scheduled for the following morning. The purpose was to make Emily's conviction almost impossible to reverse. Marcus understood the strategy. Black Meridian didn't need Emily dead. They needed her permanently discredited. A convicted murderer was easier to silence than an innocent witness. Marcus turned toward Elena. We're going to court. Elena frowned. With what? Marcus held up the storage device. Everything, but he still didn't know the identity of the person inside government who had authorized the operation. And without that name, the conspiracy could survive even if Emily was freed. The courtroom was silent when Marcus entered the next morning. Emily sat beside her attorney. Prosecutor Daniel Voss stood at the table, confident and composed. The judge reviewed the evidence, the photographs, the witness statement, the forensic report. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Marcus watched Voss carefully. The prosecutor never looked at Emily. He kept looking toward the back row. Marcus followed his eyes and saw a man in a dark suit sitting alone. No papers, no phone, no expression. Marcus recognized him instantly. Deputy National Security Advisor Richard Calder, a man who had attended classified briefings with Marcus for years. Marcus's stomach tightened. Calder had access to exactly the kind of systems Black Meridian would need, but recognition wasn't proof. Marcus remained silent while the prosecutor presented his case. Then the judge asked Marcus if he wished to speak. Marcus stood. Yes, Your Honor. He walked forward carrying one envelope. The courtroom murmured. Voss smiled. Mr. Hale, this isn't a television drama. Marcus looked at him calmly. You're right. Television usually gives people more time to correct their mistakes. He placed the envelope on the judge's desk. This contains evidence demonstrating that the photographs presented today were altered before they entered the investigative record. Voss objected immediately. The judge raised a hand. Let him continue. Marcus opened the envelope. Inside were authenticated copies of original surveillance logs, timestamps, chain of custody records, and a forensic report from an independent laboratory. The evidence didn't merely contradict the prosecution. It proved the evidence had been manipulated. Voss's face changed. The judge leaned closer. Calder stood in the back. Marcus looked directly at him. Calder's expression remained blank, but his hand slowly tightened around the edge of his chair. Marcus continued. The prosecution's witness statement was also generated after the witness had already been paid through an offshore account, Voss snapped. That's absurd. Marcus turned toward him. Then you'll have no objection to the bank records. Silence. Marcus placed another document on the desk. The judge read it. Then another, and another. The entire courtroom seemed to shrink around the evidence. Emily looked at her brother with tears in her eyes. Marcus had promised her he would prove the truth, but he had not yet shown the final piece. He turned toward the judge and said, There is one more document. He opened the folder. This is the authorization order that initiated the operation against my sister. The judge looked at the signature, then slowly raised his eyes. Who signed this? Marcus answered with a voice so calm it frightened everyone in the room. Richard Calder. The courtroom erupted. But Calder was already walking toward the exit. Marcus didn't chase him. He didn't need to. Every exit had been legally secured by federal agents who had entered the courthouse moments earlier. Calder stopped before the doors opened. 2 agents approached him. He looked back at Marcus. For the first time, fear appeared on his face. "You don't understand what you're doing," Calder said. Marcus walked closer. "I understand exactly what I'm doing." Calder lowered his voice. "There are people above me." Marcus nodded. "I know. You can't arrest everyone." "I don't have to." Marcus handed another file to Elena. "The evidence will do that for us." Calder's shoulders dropped. The operation collapsed over the next several hours. Financial accounts were frozen. Warrants were issued. Corporate executives were detained for questioning. Investigators recovered servers containing years of fabricated evidence. Several officials resigned before being formally questioned. But Marcus knew Black Meridian wasn't finished. The network had been wounded, not destroyed. Somewhere outside the courthouse, someone had already activated a contingency plan. Emily was released, but Marcus insisted on taking her somewhere secure. On the drive, she asked him one question. "Was this really about me?" Marcus looked out the window. "No." "Then why did they choose me?" He waited several seconds. "Because they wanted me angry." Emily frowned. "Why?" Marcus finally looked at her. "Because angry people make mistakes." She understood. The entire conspiracy had been designed to provoke him into acting recklessly, using his position to justify an even larger attack against him. But Marcus had refused to give them that satisfaction. He had chosen evidence over revenge, law over impulse, patience over rage. That decision saved more than Emily. It preserved the integrity of the investigation. 3 days later, Marcus received a message from Thomas Reed. The message contained one sentence. "You found Calder, but you haven't found the architect." Marcus stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. It contained a photograph of a conference room. 8 people sat around a table. 7 faces had been blurred. 1 had not. Marcus recognized the face immediately. It belonged to a person he trusted. Someone who had stood beside him for years. Someone who had known every move he made. Marcus put the phone down. The real betrayal was closer than he had imagined. And this time, the enemy wasn't hiding in the shadows. They were sitting at his table. If you're enjoying this tactical thriller so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more daily stories of justice, betrayal, and calculated revenge. Marcus had spent his career learning that the most dangerous enemy wasn't always the person holding the weapon. Sometimes it was the person holding the information. The photograph had been taken inside a secure government facility. Only a handful of people had access. Marcus assembled Elena, Thomas Reed, and 2 trusted investigators in a private room. He didn't tell them everything he knew. He didn't have to. He gave each person a different piece of information and waited. 12 hours later, one piece of information appeared in an external system. That told Marcus exactly what he needed to know. Someone inside the circle was leaking. The traitor was identified as Victor Lang, a senior intelligence contractor who had worked alongside Marcus for almost a decade. Lang had never appeared in Emily's case. He had never signed a document. He had never contacted Calder. Yet his access credentials appeared repeatedly in the system logs. Marcus confronted him privately. Lang didn't deny it. "They offered me something you never could," Lang said. "What?" Marcus asked. "A future." Marcus shook his head. "You sold people for a future you don't even control." Lang looked tired. "You think you can fix this?" Marcus replied. "No. I think the truth can." Lang gave him the final location of the Black Meridian archive. It was beneath a commercial building in Virginia, hidden behind an abandoned records facility. Marcus sent the evidence through lawful channels and obtained the necessary warrants. When investigators entered the site, they found everything: financial records, communication logs, fabricated evidence templates, names of compromised officials, and a master ledger connecting Black Meridian to every operation. Emily's case was there, so were hundreds of others. The conspiracy had lasted years, but now it was documented. Every transaction, every payment, every manipulated file, every person who had participated. The arrests began quietly, no explosions, no dramatic gunfights, just agents arriving at offices and reading warrants. Some suspects cooperated. Others fought the charges in court, but the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus watched from a distance as the system he had spent years protecting began correcting itself. Emily eventually testified before a congressional committee. She didn't speak about Marcus's position. She spoke about what happened to her. "I was almost destroyed because someone believed the truth could be manufactured," she said. "But truth doesn't disappear just because someone hides it." Marcus watched from the back of the room. His sister never saw him. That was fine. He didn't need recognition, he needed her free. Months later, the case against Emily was formally dismissed. Her name was cleared. The prosecutor who had presented fabricated evidence was disbarred and later convicted for obstruction. Calder faced multiple federal charges. Victor Lang entered a plea agreement and spent years cooperating with investigators. Black Meridian was dismantled, but Marcus never considered it a victory. Too many innocent people had already suffered. One evening, he visited Emily at her home. She was sitting on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. "You look tired," she said. Marcus smiled. "I am." She handed him a cup. "Are you going to keep doing this?" He knew what she meant. "Probably." Emily sighed. "You always were terrible at retirement." Marcus laughed quietly. For the first time in months, the tension in his shoulders disappeared. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out the original note Cross had given her. "I kept this." Marcus read it again. "If they accuse Emily, look beneath the foundation." "He knew," Marcus said. Emily nodded. "He knew they would come for me." Marcus folded the paper carefully. He also knew someone would eventually look deeper. Outside, evening settled over the neighborhood. The sky turned orange, then gray. Marcus looked toward the horizon and thought about the people who had believed they could control the truth. They had underestimated one thing. Truth doesn't need an army. It needs evidence, patience, and someone willing to carry it when everyone else is afraid. Marcus never told the public exactly how much power he had used to protect his sister. He never gave interviews about the operation. He never claimed victory. He simply returned to work, knowing that somewhere in the world another innocent person might need someone to notice the details everyone else ignored. Emily's life slowly returned to normal. She went back to work. She traveled. She laughed again. And Marcus kept the photograph from the courtroom in a drawer. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. The photograph had been the first crack in a conspiracy that nearly destroyed his family. It had also taught him something he would never forget. The most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in official paperwork. And sometimes the strongest response isn't revenge. It's making sure the truth survives long enough to speak for itself. Years later, Marcus received a letter from Emily. It was short. She thanked him for never giving up, but she also wrote something that stayed with him longer than anything else. She said, "You didn't save me by becoming more powerful than them. You saved me by refusing to become like them." Marcus read that sentence twice. Then he placed the letter beside the old photograph. The case had ended, but its lesson had not. Power could manipulate systems. Money could buy silence. Fear could make honest people doubt themselves. But evidence could break through all three. Marcus had entered the courtroom as a brother, not as a director. He had stood beside Emily because she was family, not because he wanted to demonstrate authority. And when the final judgment came, it wasn't Marcus who delivered it. The court did. The investigators did. The evidence did. That mattered. Because justice isn't justice when one powerful person simply replaces another. Justice is when the truth becomes stronger than the people trying to bury it. Emily eventually rebuilt her life completely. She stopped looking over her shoulder. She stopped wondering whether someone was watching her. And one afternoon, years after the case ended, she called Marcus and said, "I'm finally okay." Marcus smiled. "Good. That's all you're going to say?" she asked. "What else should I say?" She laughed. "You could say you're proud of me." Marcus looked out his office window. "I'm more than proud." He paused. "I'm grateful." "For what?" "That you survived long enough for the truth to catch up with them." There was silence on the phone. Then Emily said, "I love you, Marcus." He closed his eyes. "Love you too." The call ended. Marcus returned to the photograph one last time. He remembered the courtroom, the fear, the accusations, the envelope, the moment the truth finally became impossible to ignore. He remembered his sister's face when the judge cleared her name, and he understood that the greatest victory wasn't defeating the conspiracy, it was getting Emily back. Not physically, emotionally. She had survived the attempt to turn her life into a weapon against someone else. She had survived being labeled guilty when she was innocent. She had survived watching powerful people try to rewrite reality, and she had come out stronger. Marcus put the photograph away. Then he turned off the light. The city outside continued moving. People hurried home. Cars crossed intersections. Windows glowed across the skyline. Nobody knew what had happened behind those walls. Maybe that was how it should be. Some victories don't need applause. Some battles are won quietly. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's standing beside the person they tried to destroy and making sure they never get to write the ending. Where are you watching from? Comment on your city or country below. What kind of story do you want next? Military revenge, psychological thriller, or emotional family justice? And here's the question I want you to debate. If you were in Marcus's shoes, would you have waited for the legal system to expose the conspiracy, or would you have taken justice into your own hands the moment you discovered who betrayed your family? Share your answer in the comments, because sometimes the hardest question isn't whether someone deserves justice, it's whether we can remain principled while fighting for it. Thank you for listening, stay safe, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next story.
Hello viewer, how are you? I love you. If you enjoyed this tactical action story and want to support the channel, hit the subscriber like button right now. Make sure to subscribe. Thank you. Share my video your friends and family, and must be send me comments. I must be reply your comments one by one. I already seen your comments, all comments seen, and our viewer. I will reply you your comments and suggestion. Thanks for your suggestion. You tell me must you come on Ox channel watch informative story must be below link comments. Okay, thank you. And any other question, you use comment section and tell me. I all viewer comments reply every day. Okay, bye bye, thank you.